Alright lads, welcome back to one of my War Thunder vehicle reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at the premium SU-25K Frogfoot. This is the newest pack premium added to the Gaijin store, at least for the Soviet tech tree. For the cost of €60 or dollars, you'll get the plane, 15 days of premium time, and 2,000 golden eagles. The SU-25K is a rank 6 battle rating 9.7 strike aircraft located in the Soviet tech tree. Being a premium, it will only cost you 10,000 silver lions to put this aircraft in your lineup, and for the expert in ace qualifications, it's 1,210,000 silver lions and 2,600 golden eagles respectively. So lads, with its fantastic power to weight ratio, incredible amount of weapons that you can carry, and to be honest, frankly overpowered air-to-air missiles at battle rating 9.7, is the SU-25K Frogfoot worth your hard-earned money? Or, just like the A10, has it just been a lot of hype for a mediocre amount of performance? Well, if you'd like to know the answer to that question lads, stick around for the rest of the video. Alright lads, welcome back. I'm going to try and fly through this one. You see what I did there? No? Okay. Anyway, the SU-25K is powered by two UMPO R95SH jets. These jet engines do not have afterburners, but they do produce an absolute shit ton of power. 3,530 kilograms of thrust to be exact. While those metrics are impressive, it probably doesn't mean much to you. Basically, the SU-25 has a pretty good power to weight ratio. With clean wings, it kind of feels like flying a MiG-15 or a MiG-17. It's got pretty good acceleration and climbs rate, but due to its lack of an afterburner at battle rating 9.7, it isn't going to be a monster like some of the MiG-21s or the Lightning F6. But it's not meant to be like that, it is a strike aircraft, so we can't really fault it for that. Again, when you're just carrying the missiles, you can put this plane into a 20-degree climb and basically still accelerate. So if you want to roleplay as an air superiority fighter, you can at least try. But obviously, when you're carrying absolutely loads of weapons, which we'll get onto shortly, the climb rate of performance of this jet is significantly lower. Anyway, sticking with the performance, and the SU-25K will actually rip its own wings off even flying in a straight line, even with the throttle at 75%. This is manageable on the deck, but it does make it quite hard to dive on people, and you will be using your air brakes quite a lot in this vehicle. It's kind of similar to the Harriers, where you don't really want to be flying with 100% throttle all the time. Just scale it back down to it to around 80% and it should do you fine. Obviously increase up to 100% if you are in a dogfight. Because the SU-25 has a pretty straight wing design, it does have pretty good low speed manoeuvrability. Not as good as the A10, but certainly a lot better than most of the other 9.7 jets. That being said though, I'm definitely not recommending you try to dogfight anything in this plane. It doesn't really have the thrust for it when you're carrying a weapons load, but in a pinch and in desperation, it can be done. Now moving on to the weaponry, and to start off, the SU-25K does not have access to a radar. It does have an RWR however, a radar warning receiver, so you can tell when you are being targeted by radar guided missiles. What the plane does have though, is a ballistic computer. It has CCIP modes for its cannons, rockets and bombs, and you also have a CCRP for the bombs as well, if you really want that. The SU-25 famously has a nose-mounted camera, which is used to guide in several TV-guided rockets, or missiles I guess, but we'll get to those shortly. Anyway, the stock weapon of the SU-25K is the 30mm GSH-30-2. Again, this is a twin-barrel 30mm cannon, similar to the 23mm gun found on several MiG-21 variants. Like the MiG-21 guns, it has an absolutely insane fire rate of 3,000 rounds per minute. This is an issue because you only have 250 rounds of ammunition. This gives you a pretty low trigger time, so you can't really pray and spray with this vehicle. Again, it is a ground attack aircraft, so you should be making short, sharp bursts of the trigger, aiming for the top or the weakest part of a vehicle's armour. The post-penetration damage of the 30mm gun is also quite good if you choose to take the armoured belts. They can penetrate 46mm of armour at a range of 500 meters. Not amazing, but not terrible also. The belt also contains armour-piercing tracer and armour-piercing high explosive rounds. so if you do actually manage to penetrate these shells, they should do quite a lot of damage. Now, I'm going to try to be brief in this next section. We have an insane amount of weapons to cover. We'll start with the rockets, and we have several to choose from. If you really want to suffer, you can use the S-5K rockets. They travel at 570 meters per second, but only penetrate 150 millimeters of armor. We then have the S-8KOs. These travel at 650 meters per second, but that penetration is bumped up to 420 millimeters of armor. We then have the S-130Fs. These are purely high explosive missiles, and they trade penetration for high explosive damage. This means if you actually manage to hit a tank, it's likely to kill it in a single hit, as the overpressure will destroy pretty much all the crew members. We then come on to the big boys, starting with the S-24B. Like the previous missile, this trades raw penetration for high explosive damage. It has a high explosive warhead containing 25.5 kilos of TNT. We then have the S-250s. Same again, but they have 58 kilos of high explosive filler, giving them 73mm of penetration. The S-25-Os are my go-to ground strike aircraft weapons, due to overpressure being such a big feature in the game at the minute. But there are also several different variants of the 250, like the 250F. In real life, this was designed for penetrating hardened structures, like concrete emplacements. Because of this, its warhead is smaller, but in theory, it's better at taking out concrete structures like pillboxes, and in real life, aircraft bunkers. And it's the same for the S-250FM. This travels slightly faster at 410 meters per second, but has an even smaller warhead of 20 kilos. This missile has a delayed impact fuse, meaning it should penetrate thick concrete armor before exploding. I'm not sure why Gaijin added these missiles to the game, because you don't really have anything to shoot at them with. Even against armoured tanks, it's better to use the S-250s with the high explosive warhead, because as I said, overpressure is just so powerful at the minute. We then have a selection of bombs. We have the 100kg bombs, which will destroy any vehicle within a radius of 3 meters, 250kg bombs, which will destroy any vehicle within a radius of 6 meters, 500kg bombs, which will destroy any vehicle within a radius of 13 meters, and ZB500 napalm bombs. And to be honest, these are pretty much useless. And finally, for our ground attack loadout, we come on to the air-to-ground missiles. Starting with the KH-25, this is a pretty mediocre missile to be honest. It's the same one that's found on several other planes in the Soviet tech tree. It has a maximum range of 7 kilometers and a pretty decent warhead of 120 kilos. You then have the KH-25ML. The main difference here is the range. It's been increased up to 10 kilometers compared to the 7 of the regular KH-25. And finally we have the big boy, the KH-29L. This is a little bit less range at only 8 kilometers, but it has a mammoth 150 kilo warhead. This means it will destroy pretty much any vehicle in a near direct hit. You do have to be quite precise with these rockets though. They're not just like fire and forget, you do have to aim at them for quite a long time, which makes you very vulnerable. These missiles are all laser guided. Basically, if you press the V button on your keyboard, you'll go into like an aim cam similar to a helicopter. You'll then have to fire the missile and keep the pipet on the target until impact. And in the world of top tier SBAA, flying in a straight line trying to aim at an obscure target is a great way to get yourself shot down. And finally, for our air-to-air missile, we have the R60MKs. These basically have a slightly better track rate compared to the regular R60Ms, and considering this thing is at battle rating 9.7, flying against enemy jets which mainly don't have flares, these things are pretty overpowered in my opinion. They are all aspect and have an all aspect lock range of 2 kilometers, but against supersonic jets like the MiG-21 or the Lightning, this all aspect lock range is greater than 2 kilometers. The missiles also pull 30 Gs, and as I said, they have a very good track rate, meaning it's nearly impossible to dodge them unless you're already going at a very high speed. You only get 2 of these R60MKs though, so it's not too overpowered. It's basically just still 2 free kills though. In my opinion, it's pretty broken. It probably should go up to 10.0, if not 10.3. Anyway lads, that's it for the overview. Let's get on to the nitty gritty. Does this plane have a good lineup? Well, it's mainly going to be used for ground attack, and at 9.7, the Soviets do have a pretty nice lineup in the ground realistic battles. I do usually take it up to battle rating 10.0. I think the T-80B and the Moderna are slightly better than the Terms at 9.7, and the plane is still capable at that battle rating in my opinion. So for the lineup, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. New player friendliness. Well, no top tier jet is new player friendly, And the SU-25K is especially unfriendly to new players. It's pretty much a dedicated ground attack aircraft. This means you have to get very close to the battlefield if you want to be effective with your weapons, which makes it very easy for you to be countered by missile spags and even gun spags. As I'm sure you've all seen from in real life, the Ukraine war, in the SU-25 you have to stay low and fast, popping out of cover at the last minute before firing your load off. It isn't really something you can do if you've just picked up War Thunder, and especially not something you should be doing if you've just spent $60. So because of this, I'd give it a 2 out of 5. Is it good value for money or value for grind? Again, it's hard for me to say that this is good value for money. While it does give you a lot of features, lots of missiles, bombs, as well as 2-3 kills to be honest in RB if you really want to play it like that. It isn't really a killing machine. It's good for ground attack obviously. I do believe that there are better CAS planes available for the Soviet Tetri, like the SU-17 or the SU-22. They have the same air-to-ground missiles and bombs, but they're a lot faster. They don't carry as much, mind you, but I think speed is more important factor at top tier. For ground striking in realistic battles, I don't really see a point in it. You don't get anywhere near the RP or silver lines you do from getting player kills. While you can get 2 kills with your R60MKs and a few kills with the guns if you're lucky, if you're buying this jet to grind out the Soviet Tetri, I'm not too sure it's going to be that effective. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Is the SU-25 meta at the minute? Well, at 9.7, it's hard to say really. In ground realistic battles, I'm going to say no. While there's been a lot of hype about the ground attack capability of this plane, it's very easily countered by like the missile spags, like the LAVAD, the German rocket vehicle things. It's very easy to kill these things, they are quite slow, and as I said, you have to get very close to the battlefield to be effective with your weapons. Unlike the A-10, you don't have any fire and forget air-to-ground missiles, and even the laser guided missiles of the SU-25 are a little bit gimmicky. They've no thermal imager for example, so it's very hard to distinguish what you're actually shooting at. The rockets are nice, but again you have to get very close to the battlefield, which in turn leaves you vulnerable. So for the meta, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's very easy to spam off 2 air-to-air missiles in realistic battles. I don't really think that's a good indication of the plane being in meta though. That's just abusing an overpowered missile in my opinion. So I'm pretty happy with a 3 out of 5 score. And most importantly, the coolness rating. In my opinion, the SU-25 is one of those planes that's a lot cooler than it is actually good at doing its job. It's kind of it's like the A-10 really. It's something that's stuck with us from the 1980s that everyone wishes would die but just seems to persist for some reason. Both the A-10 and the SU-25 have no real purpose on the main battlefield, except from being free XP for F-15s maybe. So while this plane certainly does look cool, I can't really recommend people buy it. It's not that good at ground strike, and I imagine it's going to get nerfed into the ground with battle rating increases in the future. So I'd personally save your money on this one lads. Like the A-10, everyone was dead hyped about it, but it turned out to be pretty trash. Although it's not as bad as the French Milan, so that's at least one positive. But even biplanes are better than that thing. Anyway lads, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below of what vehicle you'd like to see reviewed next. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. And if you loved the video, consider becoming a channel member, like Wolfie Fly, Joseph Metcalf, Tomster013, Just Someone, Dr. Bob, Deboa LX, Tans, William Tessier, and Lola Alfonsi. Thank you very much for becoming members lads, and I'll see you in the next review.